Dear ladies and gentlemen, in this brief journey called life, we meet countless faces. We smile, we talk, we bond, and sometimes we believe we've found a friend for life. But let us take a moment and ask ourselves, what does it mean to call someone a friend? Is it someone who agrees with you? Is it someone who praises you? Or is it someone who simply makes you feel good? That is the criteria. Understand, what you seek is not friendship. What you seek is comfort, not truth. Let me say this with clarity. No one is your friend in the way you romanticize it. People are with you as long as you serve their needs, expectations, and emotional securities. The moment you stop fitting into their narrative, you will see how quickly the idea of a friendship disappears. This is not to make you cynical or fearful, but to make you aware. The more awake you are, the less you will suffer under illusions. Be careful, not in fear, but in awareness. Be careful with whom you trust, what you share, and how deeply you attach. For in blind attachment lies silent suffering. A truly wise person walks through life not expecting others to walk with them forever. They walk gracefully, gratefully, and alert, offering love, but not depending on it. So let's stop expecting loyalty in a world where everyone is loyal to their needs. Be your own strength. Be so complete within yourself that whether someone stays or leaves, your peace is undisturbed. And then, when you do meet someone genuine, you won't cling. You'll simply celebrate. Friendship is often spoken of as the highest form of human connection. We are taught from a young age to seek friends, to hold them dear, to trust them with our secrets, and to rely on them in times of need. The stories we hear, the movies we watch, and the poetry we read all paint a glowing picture of friendship. A friendship, eternal, pure, unbreakable. But let us peel away the layers of this ideal and examine what friendship often becomes in the real world. In most cases, what we call friendship is a mutual exchange of comfort and validation. You like someone because they make you feel seen, heard, accepted. They like you because you fulfill some emotional, psychological, or even social need. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. This is how human connections often begin. But the problem arises when we mistake this mutual exchange for something unconditional. Look closely and you'll see many so-called friendships are built not on truth but on convenience. As long as your words align with what they want to hear, you are a friend. As long as your presence benefits their emotional state, you are cherished. But speak a truth they don't want to face, or become unavailable for their dramas, and suddenly your friendship becomes questionable. You may find them withdrawing, reacting, or even turning cold, because what they called friendship was simply a comfort arrangement. The challenge lies in our own conditioning. We are so eager to belong, to feel connected, that we willingly wear masks to keep the illusion alive. We laugh when we don't feel like laughing. We agree when we disagree. We suppress our boundaries to remain likable. But deep down, this builds frustration, resentment, and even confusion about our own identity. When you begin to live more consciously, you start to see through the veil. You notice the subtle transactions and conversations, the conditional warmths, the fragile loyalties. And you begin to realize most friendships are not rooted in the soil of truth, but in the shifting sands of personal benefit. And this doesn't mean people are bad or malicious. It simply means they are human, driven by their own experiences, needs, wounds, and unconscious behaviors, just as you are. But recognizing this is not about blaming them. It is about freeing yourself from unrealistic expectations. A real friend, if such a person exists in your life, is not the one who flatters you endlessly or stands by you only when you're shining. A real friend is someone who dares to show you a mirror, someone who stays when you are broken, someone who tells you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. And such people are rare, not impossible to find, but rare like a drop of water in the desert. So So the first key to inner stability is to stop blindly believing that everyone who smiles with you is your friend. Friendship is not about shared selfies, mutual likes, or weekend hangouts. It is about the invisible truth that exists between two souls, a truth that remains intact even when one walks away. Be conscious, be aware. Watch the motivations behind relationships, not to judge but to understand. The less illusion you carry, the lighter you walk. When you drop the fantasy that every connection is sacred, you create space for true connections to arise. Connections that don't depend on circumstances, but that are born from authenticity. Friendship, in its purest form, is not based on what you give or take from each other. It is based on the willingness to see and be seen, without masks, without performance. Until that is found, everything else is just company, not friendship. People stay as long as their needs are met. Few stay beyond that. This is a truth that may feel cold at first glance, but if observed deeply, it reveals something profoundly liberating. Let's explore it not through judgment, but through clarity. Every human being is first and foremost trying to make life work for themselves. Whether it is through relationships, careers, spiritual pursuit, or social interaction, at the core of all these efforts lies one single motive: a sense of well-being. This is neither selfish nor wrong. It is simply nature at work. The bird builds a nest to feel secure. The tree stretches to the light to survive. And the human being moves toward what soothes the body, heart, and mind. So when we build relationships, including friendships, they often become extensions of our own inner needs. You may like someone because they make you laugh when you feel heavy. You may feel close to someone because they listen to you when no one else does. Perhaps they include you in their circle and make you feel important. You begin to associate that person with the fulfillment of a certain emotional gap in your life. And as long as this mutual benefit continues, the relationship thrives. But what happens when the dynamic shifts? What if the laughter fades? Or they no longer have time to listen? What if your needs evolve, or there's due, and you no longer serve each other's roles? Suddenly, the foundation begins to crack. This is when you begin to witness the fragility of many human connections. People who once called you their closest friend may become distant, unavailable, or indifferent. Not necessarily because they are cruel, but because the unspoken transaction between you no longer serves them. The value you once provided, be it emotional, intellectual, social, or otherwise, is no longer present. And so, unconsciously or consciously, they move on. This can feel like betrayal when you're unaware of the mechanics behind it. But it's not betrayal. It's simply nature functioning through human behavior. If you observe carefully, even you do the same. Haven't there been times where you drifted from people? Not because you hated them, but because they no longer fit the season of your life? Perhaps you outgrew them. Perhaps they reminded you of a phase you'd rather leave behind. Or perhaps you simply no longer needed what they once offered. When you realize that most relationships are founded on utility, emotional, it means you open your eyes. You continue to care, to love, to connect, but with the awareness that change is natural and inevitable. That people will come and go as their inner journeys demand it. That you too will walk away from some and walk toward others, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. When someone leaves your life, do not curse them. Do not call it disloyalty. Simply recognize that the alignment has shifted. Their path bends in a direction that no longer intersects with yours. And instead of mourning the loss, bless the experience, because for a while they showed up in your story. For a while, they were the answer to your need, and you to theirs. And that, in itself, is beautiful. The rarest people are those who stay even when they no longer need you. The ones who choose to remain without expectation, without demand. These are not just friends. They are mirrors of your own deeper self. They stay not out of dependence, but out of devotion. And if even one such soul crosses your path, consider it grace. But until then, walk with awareness. Most will come and go based on need. Let them. You just don't forget who you are when they leave. Attachment without understanding leads to pain. This is not philosophy. It is the daily truth of human life. We live in a world where we are constantly forming attachments to people, ideas, expectations, outcomes, even identity. We get attached not because something is inherently valuable, but because it offers us something we're missing within ourselves. It gives us a feeling of importance, of comfort, of love, of safety. And without realizing it, we start holding on, not with presence, but with dependency. The nature of attachment is not love. Attachment is fear in disguise. Fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear of facing oneself. You don't attach because you love someone deeply. You attach because you're afraid of what life would feel like without them. You cling not because of what they are, but because of what they represent to your inner world. A solution to a wound you haven't healed, a distraction from an emptiness you haven't explored. And because there is no real understanding, neither of yourself nor of the other person, this attachment becomes a trap. You build stories around someone. You project fantasies, you assign them roles in your inner movie. You expect them to behave a certain way, always be available, always meet your needs. But they are not aware of the script you've written. They're living their own life, playing their own roles, carrying their own burdens. Eventually, they act in ways that don't match your story, and that's when the pain begins. Disappointment is not born out of others failing you. It is born from your attachments clashing with reality. The more tightly you hold on to your version of how things should be, the more suffering you invite when things simply are as they are. Without understanding, attachment becomes a source of endless confusion. You keep asking, why did they change? Why did they leave? Why don't they care like before? But rarely do you ask, was my attachment rooted in truth or an assumption? Did I even know them as they were? Or did I just fall in love with the way they made me feel? Understanding requires presence. It requires you to see someone, not through the lens of your desires, but through the lens of their truth. Who are they really? What are their wounds, their limitations, their values? And more importantly, who are you when they're not around? Are you whole, or are you only holding yourself together because they're there? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, that's good. Discomfort is the beginning of clarity. If you feel like you can't breathe without someone, that's not love. That's addiction. And like any addiction, it eventually leads to collapse. Your inner world begins to orbit around something external. The moment that source moves, disappears, or changes, you fall. And in that fall, you think someone else broke you. But really, you were never standing on your own to begin with. To move beyond this, you must start understanding, not just others, but yourself. What are you truly seeking in your attachments? Is it love or is it escape? Is it companionship or a shield against your own solitude? Ask and ask honestly. Because only with that depth of inquiry can you start building relationships that aren't just places to hide, but spaces to grow. Understanding brings light. It helps you love without chains. It allows you to connect without losing yourself. It teaches you to say, I love you, but I do not own you. I am with you, but I do not depend on you to complete me. In that space, relationships become rich, meaningful, and free. But without understanding, even the most beautiful connection will slowly decay under the weight of need. You will suffocate the very thing you cherished. And when it ends, as all things eventually do, you will be left not only grieving the loss of a person, but also the illusion you built around them. So pause, look within. Love deeply, but not blindly. Attach if you must, but understand what you're holding on to and why. Cultivate the ability to sit with yourself, to observe yourself, to listen without judgment and respond without pretension. That is your power. That is your protection. Because at the end of the day, the loudest applause fades, the spotlight moves, the crowd disperses, and all you are left with is you. Know that person deeply. Know them truthfully. Because that is the one you have to live with for the rest of your life. Most people are playing roles, not revealing truths. This is not an accusation. It is an observation. Life has in many ways become a grand stage. People wear masks, not always out of deception, but out of necessity. They smile when they're hurting, nod when they disagree, stay silent when they want to scream, and pretend to be fine when their soul is exhausted. Why? Because somewhere along the way, they were taught that being real is dangerous, that vulnerability is weakness, that truth is too heavy for the world to carry. And so they perform. From morning to night, they step into costumes designed by society. Of the good friend, of the loyal partner, of the humble achiever, of the obedient child, of the positive thinker. These roles come with scripts, expectations, and boundaries. Step out of the script and people get uncomfortable. Be too honest and they call you intense. Be too raw and they call you unstable. Be too free and they call you rebellious. So most choose safety, they choose the mask. But the problem is, the longer you wear the mask, the more you forget your own face underneath. You start to believe the role is you, that your value lies in how well you meet others' expectations, that your worth is measured by how agreeable, useful, or likable you are. And so you suppress your desires, your fears, your voice. You begin editing yourself for every room you walk into. You become a chameleon of approval, changing colors not out of joy, but out of survival. This creates a world where authenticity becomes rare, where you don't know what someone really feels, because they're too busy saying what they think you want to hear, where friendships remain shallow because no one wants to go deeper than the curated surface, where love turns into performance because both people are too afraid to show the messy, complicated, beautiful chaos of who they really are. And yet, underneath all the roles, every person is longing for the same thing: to be seen without filters, to be loved without conditions, to be accepted without having to earn it through performance. But that kind of connection can only happen when someone chooses to drop the act. When you see through the roles, you realize how tired people are. You see how much of their energy goes into maintaining an image, into saying the right things, into fitting into circles that don't even nourish them. And perhaps you see it in yourself too. The smile that hides the hate, the laugh that masks the loneliness, the calm tone that conceals the storm within. This is not something to feel guilty about. It's something to wake up from. Because the truth is, life doesn't need your perfection. It needs your presence. It doesn't require you to be flawless. It only asks you to be real. But to do that, you must first gather the courage to take off the mask, not just in front of others, but in front of yourself. What are you pretending not to feel? What truths are you hiding under politeness? What part of yourself have you buried because someone once told you it was too much? These questions are not comfortable, but they are freeing. Because when you begin to live without role-playing, you stop being a character and start becoming a human again. You laugh from your belly, not for approval. You cry without apology. You speak not to impress, but to connect. You stop walking on eggshells in your own life. And you begin to attract something rare. People who don't want your performance, but your presence. People who are not drawn to your role, but to your essence. But to reach that space, you must see through the game. You must know that most people are not lying to you. They're lying to themselves. Not because they want to manipulate you, but because they've never been taught how to be without the mask. So don't judge them, but don't follow them either. And you become the one who lives truthfully, even if it makes others uncomfortable, even if it means losing some roles you used to play. Because nothing is heavier than wearing a mask that no longer fits your soul. That trust, when given blindly, is not a virtue, it is a risk. A beautiful risk, yes, but a risk nonetheless in the name of love, loyalty, or shared history. People often hand over their trust like a gift wrapped in hope. They expect it to be honored, preserved, and reciprocated. But the world doesn't work according to expectation. The reality is, trust once given is not always held with care. Not everyone understands its weight. Not everyone deserves it just because they've been around you long enough. We grow up believing that trust is something natural, automatic, even noble. Trust your friends, trust your partner, trust your family. But what we aren't told is how to trust wisely. We are not taught that trust, like love, is not something you give away freely. It's something that must be earned and continually respected. When trust becomes blind, it becomes dangerous. Not because the world is cruel, but because not everyone is conscious of the responsibility that trust demands. People may smile with you, celebrate with you, even cry with you, but that does not mean they are capable of protecting your vulnerabilities. That does not mean they will honor your absence the way they praise your presence. Some people are not malicious. They are just unconscious. They do not understand how their words echo in your absence. They do not realize that a careless sentence, a shared secret, a subtle betrayal can damage years of connection. They do not carry the same code of loyalty you do, and that's where the fracture begins. When trust is broken, it's not just the relationship that suffers, it's your sense of reality. You begin to question your instincts. You ask, how could I have been so wrong about someone? You replay conversations, second-guess signs, blame yourself for not seeing the cracks sooner. But understand this, betrayal doesn't always wear a dark cloak. Sometimes it comes dressed as affection. It moves slowly, quietly. And by the time you notice, the damage is already done, not to your body, but to your faith. That is why blind trust is not an act of strength. It is a lack of discernment. This doesn't mean you close your heart. It means you open your eyes. To trust wisely is to observe deeply. Watch how people behave when you have nothing to offer them. Notice what they say when you're not in the room. Feel how they respond to your silence, not just your success. Do they listen when you're low, or only celebrate you when you're high? Are they consistent, or do they vanish when your light dims? You don't need paranoia to protect yourself. You need presence. You need to stop mistaking comfort for character, charm for integrity, shared laughter for shared value. Some people are wonderful companions, but not trustworthy allies. You can enjoy someone's company without giving them access to your soul. You can care for someone deeply and still keep your inner sanctum guarded. Wise trust is not cold. It's conscious. It's knowing that loyalty is not declared in words, but demonstrated over time. That trust is not a currency you throw into every relationship, hoping for return. It is a sacred thread that must be woven slowly, tested gently, and guarded fiercely. And when someone proves themselves, truly proves, they can be trusted with your truth, with your silence, with your rawness, then trust them fully, with grace, with depth, with freedom. But let it be based on clarity, not on need. Let it be rooted in reality, not fantasy. Because misplaced trust doesn't just cost you a connection, it costs you peace. And your peace is too sacred to gamble on someone who hasn't shown you the strength to hold it. Loneliness is not cured by company. It is cured by connection. And connection does not begin with someone else. It begins with yourself. You can sit in a room full of people and still feel a vast, aching emptiness inside. You can have thousands of followers, a phone full of contacts, family gatherings, laughter, shared meals, and yet, when the night falls and the noise settles, a deep silence lingers in your chest. That silence is not the absence of others. It is the absence of inner alignment. People often believe that loneliness is simply a lack of companionship, a social void. But the real loneliness begins when you are disconnected from your own being. When you do not know who you are beneath the roles, the performances, the daily distractions. When you cannot sit in your own presence without needing to be distracted, entertained, reassured. That is when loneliness becomes unbearable. Not because there is no one else around, but because you are not around. You have wandered so far from yourself that now, even when you're alone, you're with a stranger. This is why many chase relationships, not out of love, but out of fear. They look for someone else to complete what they haven't dared to explore in themselves. They want someone to fill the silence, to validate their worth, to keep them from facing the vast and uncertain terrain of their own inner world. But what begins from fear cannot bring peace. It may offer temporary comfort, a distraction, a burst of emotional high, but soon the ache returns. Because no one can permanently stand in the place you have abandoned within yourself. We are taught how to socialize, how to network, how to be charming, successful, and desirable. But very few are ever taught how to befriend their own solitude, how to sit in silence and not flinch, how to observe one's own thoughts without judgment, how to breathe into emptiness and discover presence instead of panic. This is the work most avoid, and yet this is where all true connection begins. Because when you begin to truly connect with yourself, not just on the surface, not just in terms of hobbies and preferences, but in the raw, uncomfortable, soul-level honesty, you realize that your own presence is not a prison. It is a sanctuary. You begin to feel less needy, less desperate for company, less fragile in the face of silence. You stop reaching out from lack and start relating from wholeness. And in that state, when you meet others, the dynamic changes entirely. You are no longer looking for someone to save you. You are not trying to lose yourself in another just to escape the parts of yourself you haven't healed. You are not attaching from emptiness. You are relating from fullness. That kind of connection is rare. It is not built on fear. It is built on mutual freedom. It does not chain, it expands. So many relationships crumble not because people don't love each other, but because they enter from a place of inner hunger. They expect the other to fill what only inner work can satisfy. And when the other fails to be their savior, resentment grows. Disappointment sets in. The illusion of connection fades. But when you begin to embrace solitude, not as a punishment, but as a teacher, you become your own anchor. You learn to hold space for your own emotions. You become aware of your wounds, your conditioning, your needs. You stop outsourcing your stability to someone else. You stop demanding love as a medicine for your unresolved pain. Then, even when you are alone, you are not lonely. Your aloneness becomes nourishing. You create, reflect, rest, and rise. You're connecting because you genuinely want to share your presence, your peace, your truth with another being. So if you feel lonely, don't just seek more noise, more people, more distraction. Go inward. Sit quietly. Ask yourself, what am I really missing? What part of me have I ignored? You stop waiting for someone to give you permission to feel good. You stop seeking constant reassurance. You begin to find safety within your breath, your presence, your own being.